I don't know about you, when I'm looking for a plumber, I like to read my reviews. HomeAdvisor.com gave me some reviews on our sponsor, Art of Plumbing. Called them. They arrived on time. Immediately found the plumbing issue and fixed it right the first time. I called them last year and it was great. I called them again this year because I had a problem again. They came out, they fixed the problem. They even gave me solutions to help stop the problem in the future at 541-9405.
Perspectives change with broken strings and worn out souls. Years ago and some with wings. Some are old, some undersold. To grow we need to rely on and try on some other people's shoes. Some other people's shoes.
Welcome, of course, into Other People's Shoes. I am, of course, your host, Neil Matthews. Season finale day is finally upon us. That is right. We end April with a bang, with excitement, with maybe some heartache. Help me welcome in my next guest. She is a blogger. She's a speaker. She's a mom. She even, by definition, is now an ex-wife. So there may be more to that story here in a moment. But help me welcome in my guest, Angie. Angie, how are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
You know, I'm doing great. Are you comfy?
I am comfy.
Okay, good. We may not be comfy for long, though, I feel like.
That's okay.
Okay. So before we get into all that, we got to, of course, ask the most important question that you'll probably ever answer in your lifetime. Do you know what that is?
I don't.
That's okay. It's this silly question that we ask at the beginning of every show, and that's this. What size shoe do you wear?
I wear anywhere from a 6 to an 8, depending on the width, because I have a small foot, but it's fat.
Okay, fair enough. So with that, I noticed you're wearing some flip-flops today. Is that the footwear of choice?
Almost daily.
Okay. No tennis shoes or anything like that?
If I'm working out, I'll wear tennis shoes, but pretty much sandals are life.
Okay. You're a sandals for life kind of girl?
I am, even at work.
Really?
Really.
Okay. They don't care about the open-toed shoe or anything weird like that?
Not at all. I'm kind of known for it.
Oh, it's kind of like your trademark.
It is kind
Okay.
of my trademark.
Okay. Kind of like your trademark. Well, that's awesome. I am going to just ignore the fact that you're wearing flip-flops today.
It's cold outside.
It is cold outside today, but I love shoes, but I don't love flip-flops. Is that weird?
No, I think that's pretty normal, but I love them. So maybe I'm out of the norm.
Okay. But that's okay. You know, it's all right to be out of the norm. So Angie, first off, thanks for coming on today, giving us some moments today. I know we're going to be talking about kind of a deep subject. So I hope everybody's ready because we're going to dive in just right now. So if you can and you're willing, and it sounds like you kind of are from just our talking and kind of pre-show stuff, will you take us back to June 10th, 2018 and why that's so important to you?
Absolutely. Kind of a wild ride. So June 10th is actually my youngest daughter's birthday. 2018, she turned 11, and the day had started out. We had just gotten home from Hawaii, and we knew her birthday was coming up, obviously, and so we had already kind of prepared that we weren't going to do like any big thing, just because her and I had just gotten home from vacation.
I mean, yeah, you just came back from paradise, right? So
yeah.
She shouldn't be expecting a second present, right?
And so we were we still wanted to celebrate her. I love birthdays. They're one of my favorite things. And she had wanted to have her sister and my grandson over like the night before to play games and do pizza. And then the next day, Sunday, we were going to do ice cream, with our family at 5:00. I typically on Sundays, I take my grandma shopping. She doesn't drive, but she still works. And so that was kind of our day together. So we had a great night Saturday. And just to give a little like history with the importance of that, my middle daughter, who at the time would have been 26, I believe, had 72 days, I want to say, clean. She's a recovering heroin addict. And our relationship for 5 years prior had been obviously pretty strained. So it was like this beautiful gift to be able to have her there and have this kind of night with her. And we had actually had done a little talking about all that. And then kind of the conversation with my son, Tyler, who had only recently started using drugs. And so kind of the fear of that and the heartbreak of him, for whatever reason, choosing to kind of take that journey. So it actually was a really beautiful night. Sunday morning, she was in a not a treatment center, but like a home. And so I took her home, and then I took my grandson lives in Metford. And so I took him home, and then I had my daughter whose birthday it was, and we picked up my grandma, took her to town, did our thing. We had a little bit of time to kill before ice cream with family. And so I had told her, let's go to Target and just get our stuff done there before we go. And it was probably about 4:22 to be exact. And I could feel my phone vibrating in my purse, and I just kind of didn't want to deal with my phone at that time, but it kept going off. And I took it out of my purse, and it was my daughter that I had dropped off earlier. And my first thought was like, well, I just was with her. I'll call her later. But she kept calling. And so finally I answered it, and I could tell that she was upset, and I could tell that something had happened. And I think in my mind, I thought something had happened to someone that she knew, and she just needed to talk. And so she it's a very surreal feeling, because she just started talking to me like I knew. So she was literally reliving the whole conversation as if I knew it. It was kind of wild. She said that she had gone to Walmart, and she didn't have any like data on her phone, so like it only would work with Wi-Fi. And so there was all these messages and texts and stuff, but she didn't get them until she got back home, because they wouldn't load to her phone. And it was a girl who had called, and she's telling me all this stuff, but she's not saying a name. And then she said Tyler, and I knew, I knew, even though she hadn't truly said what had happened. And I kind of panicked. I just started saying, because she calls me on Messenger, because she doesn't have
like Facebook Messenger.
Yeah, so it is sometimes hard. Like it's just is it's different than an actual phone call. Yeah.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, I just kept saying, Tania, I need you to call me from a real phone. I can't really understand you. And I said that over and over and over. And I don't know why I said that. I could hear her just fine, but I think I panicked. I think I might have went into shock.
I didn't want to face the fact of what
I think
you were
my
hearing.
mommy heart knew exactly what was coming.
Okay.
And she kept kind of talking over me, but I just kept saying that like over and over. I don't even know how many times I said it. I just kept telling her, I can't understand you. I need you to call me from a real phone. And for the first time ever, I let my 11-year-old daughter, she had gotten some birthday money. So she went to the toy section, and I went to just gather the few things I needed. I've never allowed that to like happen. So she wasn't with me. And so I left my car, and I went to go get her, and I finally just stopped in one of the aisles, and I just said, "Is he dead?" And the yes that she said will probably never leave my mind. And time stood still. Everything started spinning. I needed my sister. I knew that my sister would be able to handle all this and deal with it. It was just so weird. It just was like a rush of emotion. And I don't even actually recall how I found my daughter. I just remember pointing at her and kind of pointing to outside, like, we gotta go. And even the parking spot, like, I still to this day I hate that parking spot for whatever reason at Target. But I must have been slightly hysterical because I remember a lady asking me, I was pacing. I was calling no one would answer their phone. Believe it or not, I couldn't get a hold of anyone. No one was answering their phone. And I was just in my head, I was just like, this is unbelievable. And I must have been pacing. I wasn't crying or screaming, but I think I must have been hysterically pacing next to my car. And I remember a lady asking me if I was okay, if I was in danger. And I just kept saying, I need my sister. I just need my sister will know what to do. I finally got a hold of my son-in-law. And then the next thing I knew, my family was in the parking lot of Target. And I just remember not being able to comprehend, yet being able to comprehend everything. And I just remember saying, like, where is he? Like, where's my son? Like where is he? And I remember my niece making phone calls and my sister making phone calls. And then we finally we went back to my sister's and we waited for a detective. And so when we had called the police station, they wouldn't give us any information. They just said a detective would be at our house. So it was like all these little things that were said that I just knew without even really, we didn't really know until the next day when we got to view him, because even though, like, in my heart I knew, he had no ID on him. They ID'd him through mugshots and his tattoos. But even up until that point of the next day, there was just this little slight hope that it wasn't really him, even though deep down I knew that it was him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, kind of wild. I think the thing that stays with me the most about that day is I can recall every emotion and I guess the best way to say is appearance of each of my other children. That's kind of wild to me still to this day. I just remember
almost like you have a photograph
Yeah.
of that and you can pull it up in your
Yeah.
mind of what everyone was wearing, what the day was
Yeah,
like.
just
you
what-
can remember you're in Target. You could probably remember the park, and you said you can remember the parking spot. That to me is wild.
Yeah. Oh
'Cause
yeah.
This
I
was
couldn't
2018,
18.
so 2 years
so
ago
it's
now.
been almost 2 years.
Almost
yeah.
2 years now.
Yeah, kind of wild. Like I was with my youngest daughter, and God bless her. How horrible for him to die on her birthday. Like, it's horrific. She just started puking. It was so sad. Like, it was just so sad because it had taken a little bit of time. Like, she knew something had happened, and I had made her call her dad, and I realized, oh my God, she doesn't even know what happened. Like, it was just like I was in such a panic and such shock. And I just looked at her, like, she was in the back and I was actually in the passenger side in the front. And I had to tell her, and she just started vomiting. It was incredibly heartbreaking. And then when my family showed up, my oldest daughter, she couldn't even look. She just stayed forward. And she was visibly upset, but she didn't look at me. She couldn't look at me. And my poor middle daughter, who's, a recovering addict.
This is the one that was sober.
Yeah.
That you were celebrating her sobriety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was it probably has been the hardest for her. And then I have a son who's 20 right now, so he would have been 18. And, men handle it differently, but he definitely was very just blown away and heartbroken. And I mean, he just came straight to me, when he finally got to my sisters. But uh, absolutely a definite blow to our family for sure.
Wow. I mean, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine what you walked through on that. Again, thank you for being vulnerable and honest on that.
Absolutely.
I think you said this, or maybe somebody else said this. I've always been good at loving people, but now I want to know that people know how lovely they are, and that you are lovely, you do matter, you are needed, and you are worthy. Why don't you think people believe that?
So just to give a little background of kind of like how I started the You Are Lovely project, the next day, we finally got to go view him, and I honestly didn't care who was there. So there was a group of us, and as we were able to go downstairs, I remember getting to the bottom of the stairs and turning around and just telling everyone, like, I think I need to go in first. Because again, at this, no one had seen him. No one, like, we didn't know for definite.
And is this like at the morgue, or is this at a funeral home?
Yeah,
Okay.
at the funeral home. Yeah,
Okay.
that's where they had taken him. And so I went in first, and there's nothing that can really prepare a mother for that sight. It was heartbreaking and devastating. I remember just touching him and kissing him, and I just kept telling him, like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm just so, so sorry. And telling him that everything was going to be okay. He is a father. He had a son that was 16 days from turning 1. So of course my heart and my brain was just on the thought of this poor child who has lost his father and will never know his father. So I just kept reassuring him that everything was going to be okay. So that was tough and hard. But then the next day, when I got the call that I was able to come pick up his ashes, for whatever reason, I knew all along that I would go by myself. And so I kind of was a little bit sneaky about it, just because my family's so protective. So when I got the call, I tried to just leave the house without anyone knowing, but that wasn't going to happen. And so my sister had asked where I was going, and I said, I'm going to go pick Tyler up. And she said, well, I'm going to go with you. And I said, no, I'm going to go by myself. And I was pretty adamant. For whatever reason, I was pretty adamant that I was going to go get my child by myself. So when she brought him out, we had already decided that we were going to do our own urns, like we were going to make our own boxes. And so they had just put him in this like black plastic box that's not very big. But I had him divided in 2. So half of his ashes were going to go to his wife and half of his ashes were going to go to me. But it was all in one box. And I remember when she placed him in my arms, like, I was shocked at how heavy it was. I just wasn't expecting how heavy it was. But then at the same time, I couldn't believe that my whole kid was in this box. Like, it was just a very, again, surreal emotion and feeling.
Did it at all take you back to when he was born and the doctor put him in your arms for the first time? Did it take you back to that at all?
It didn't, actually. What it did was, as I walked out, I took a picture of him on my lap, and it was just such a wild emotion. But for me, I kind of went into protective mode, and I could think of all the things that get said about drug addicts and even the cruel things that can be said when someone dies, like that they deserved it or they were just a junkie or whatever. And I just kind of had this flood of thoughts that there was no way I was ever going to let that happen to my kid. I was never going to let people believe that, and I was never going to allow that. And then it just like it was this feeling that like hit me like a ton of bricks, that if that was true about my child, then that was true about every other person, and that we needed to start looking at it differently and change needed to take place. And I just knew in that moment I was going to be a part of the change. I didn't really know how or what or why. I just knew that we were doing it all wrong. I felt like we were doing it all wrong when it came to the way that we love people, the way that we treat people, the way that we look at people, and kind of know their story. I didn't obviously have a plan of what's taken place. I started writing on my personal Facebook page. Like I had no clue what to do with my thoughts and feelings, but they were constant. And even to this day, they're still like, my brain never shuts off. It's kind of a wild ride for me. So I just wrote. I wrote my feelings. I wrote my thoughts, and I got this really great feedback from people, and then people started encouraging me to write a book or to start a blog or all those
start a
things.
Podcast maybe.
Yeah, I'm not quite there yet. I'm not quite there.
Just trying to get some levity.
Yeah, but I love talking about it, and I love everything that has taken place. I love writing, which I never knew that about myself, but I actually really love to write. And I love sharing people's stories. I think that's the best part for me in this journey is the stories that I've been able to sit down and hear and then put words to. That's been incredible.
That is incredible. First off, again, just kind of reliving those days after. Even, finding out and going to the funeral home, and then the process of taking him home and all of that. You posted, speaking of social media and stuff like that, this might have been on Instagram, but you posted, I wish I could love you back to life. Why is that so true for you?
Oh my gosh. I say all the time, like, so like I am a believer, and God has been so good to me through all this. Like it's wild that my favorite verse is Philippians 4 verses 6 and 7. And it talks about, God's peace that passes understanding. And, I don't understand this. There's nothing that I understand about this. I hate that my child died of an overdose. I hate that my child died so young. And I think that's just the price of love. Like, you just always want the best for your child. And this obviously was not his best. Like, amazing stuff has happened, amazing opportunities. And, I believe just from feedback and messages and conversations, I do believe my story has made a difference in the lives of people that are still alive. So that's important to me. I'm still alive. I'm still here. I still have a purpose and a journey. And I think Tyler's story has always played a role into my story. I just believe in that. But I say all the time that all of the good, all the beauty, all the amazing things that have taken place, they'll never replace my kid. I'd give it all up in a heartbeat to have my kid still here, without a doubt. But that's not a possibility, and it's not a reality. And while I still sometimes have a hard time wrapping my head around the reality of it all, I do believe there's a plan and a purpose in it all, if that makes sense.
No, I think it does. And I think, to me, I think you've taken tragedy, heartache, ashes, and you've turned it into beauty. And
Absolutely.
you've made sure that his name kind of gets to live on after him, you know, in a legacy type fashion,
Absolutely.
you know.
I believe it's not
And,
like I
and
believe
not only him, but maybe others as well.
absolutely. I believe that like we all like we cross paths for a reason and we interact for a reason, like people and relationships and like community and love. Those are kind of my go-to words. But Tyler's story, I don't know if other people like find it so amazing, but when I piece it all together, like as a believer, Tyler struggled his whole life, like from birth, honestly. And as a teenager, he was trouble, to be quite honest. So I always want to like tell people, like, I don't ever want to give this impression like he was just this good guy, which he was a good guy. He was a great guy. He made really poor choices in life and he really struggled. And in those struggles came those poor choices. So I don't ever want to portray like he was just this good kid that made a choice and he died. It's not true. Like the choices he made through his life and the things that he allowed to control him and the things that he gave into, it all plays a role into what happened, and like he kind of started really falling apart as a teenager. He got himself in a lot of trouble. He spent a lot of time in JDH. I have spoken like freely on like I fought for him, I fought with him, and I'm fighting for him now. I'll never forget when he was in trouble as a teenager and his probation officer telling me, just don't show up, just like teach him a lesson. And I thought, I'm never going to teach him a lesson. Like I never want him to think that I'm not there for him. So I was there through every step of it, but it was hard and heartbreaking and frustrating and maddening, to be quite honest. When your child makes those choices and behaves that way and it's so out of your control and you're just doing your best to not like to be the best parent, but to be the parent that's doing the best for your child. It was tough and I did it alone, so it was hard.
Let's talk about that for a second. Yeah. So you mentioned doing it alone, and you mentioned the day of his death. You said your daughter called her dad. Through that process, how did the marriage dissolve before his death, after his death, or during?
Well, both. So my husband is not Tyler's father. I was married before, and when our divorce was final, he kind of left the picture and was never involved with his kids. So that was probably one of Tyler's greatest struggles, was his dad never being in his life. So that was definitely a huge part and piece of Tyler's story. I was married for almost 25 years, and I try to be super cautious with it because, like, he's really not a bad guy. Like, he's a really great guy. There's just a lot of things that he wasn't capable of, and he'll own those. I believe he'll own those. I don't really know how he feels about me talking about it. I have asked him if I could talk about it, and he always tells me it's my story, it's my thing. So I would never say anything that I think he would like die that I would say. But again, I just think that he wasn't capable of a lot, and he really wasn't a father to my children, not in the way that matters. Like, he provided a home and he provided financially, but that's probably as far as it.
But as far as emotional stability,
absolutely none at
okay.
all.
Do you think that led to Tyler's addiction and troubles with the law?
I believe that it plays a role. Yes, I will always stand behind that. I believe it plays a role, and that's just more vocal things that in conversations with my child. Kind of concerning my marriage, I guess. So yeah.
Well, and if I can jump in. So I'm just curious on this because for me, my dad was gone a lot. He was a Marine. And so he, was constantly gone a lot. And my mom, being kind of a single mom, worked a lot because, you have to do that. That's what has to be done. And so from that standpoint, I think for me, I could have easily, had I wanted to, probably gone a drug route or a troubled route or breaking the law route, because idle hands are the devil's play toy, and as it's said. But to me, I'm curious if maybe, and again, we're projecting here because we don't know, but do you think Tyler maybe used drugs as a way to cope with the pain in his life?
Absolutely. Wholeheartedly.
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
Yes, I believe that.
Yeah. And so with that, I'm wondering too, because again, I don't know if this was on what social media or not, but there was a comment that I read that really caught my attention, and it was, what is the evil, or sorry, I'm going to restate that. The evil is drugs, or the enemy is drugs. What comes to mind when you hear that?
I got to really think about that, because like in my head it all makes sense, but trying to get my words out about that. Well, drugs are the enemy for sure. No matter what your struggle might be, nothing. I think we can all be pretty honest and clear that nothing good comes from using drugs. Like you're gonna self-destruct.
Yeah, but I guess from what I'm hearing, the hot button in our society right now is pot, right? Especially in our Southern Oregon area. Marijuana is on the rise. Drug use for marijuana is on the rise. Opiates also on the rise. Whatever it may be, that may be the same thing. I don't know, because I'm not a drug guy. I don't know.
Me neither.
So there we go. So somebody's probably gonna email me, but like, Neil, you just said the same thing. Anyway, my point being is that people say all the time, oh, marijuana's not that bad. Oh, smoking's not that bad. Oh, this isn't that bad. It's almost like a justification. But I've also heard it said that those type of drugs are gateway drugs.
I feel like I'm not educated enough to answer that. I can just kind of give my opinion.
Yeah, no, give your opinion. You're a mom.
There would have been a point where I'm like absolute zero when it comes to marijuana. I just kind of trying to educate myself in this process. I think like medicinally, I think marijuana has probably a lot of benefits in comparison to pharmaceutical drugs, because those are deadly also. So to be naive to that, to think that because a doctor prescribes you something that's not dangerous or deadly, is super naive.
Well, I guess that's what I'm asking.
Yeah. So medicinally, I'm trying to educate myself on that. But just to smoke marijuana to get high, personally, I find it to be ridiculous. Anything that's going to alter your mind should be a no-go. And that's just my personal opinion.
No, yeah. And we're not here to be pro marijuana or anti marijuana. We're just talking our own personal experience for sure. So something else that caught my attention, this is my Facebook stalking, Instagram stalking put to the test. So for those who wonder what I do for a real job, this is kind of my job, put it to the test. So one of my favorite Christian artists, I know you probably know this artist. His name's Tobymac.
Absolutely.
Know this guy really well.
Yeah.
So he just, over the last year, him and his wife, Amanda, lost their son Truett of 21 years to what, as far as I read, articles say, an accidental overdose.
Yep.
Now, they didn't expand on that. They didn't say what the accidental overdose was. Was it opiates? Was it this? Was it that? Was it not? But of course, Toby, and I know you probably know this, Tobymac wrote this song 21 years, talking about the grief of losing his son, how great a gift it was, and it's a very vulnerable song. So if you haven't heard it, I'm going to invite you as listeners after the show, go listen to it. It's on YouTube. We'll also link it in our show notes so you can go listen to that. But in that, obviously, there's a grief process. 5 stages of grief. Do you know what they are? Putting you on the spot.
I don't.
If you don't, it's okay. No, it's okay.
I just feel them all. I think there's more than 5 stages of grief.
According to the Google research that I did, there was 5 stages of grief. So here they are: denial and isolation. So this shouldn't be happening is basically kind of the mantra you have. This shouldn't have happened. This is, you're denying obviously the death or whatever may have happened that has led you to this grief. Second one is anger. So you're masking kind of that denial that, that this didn't happen. So your mask for that is anger, because anger really is just a secondary emotion, by the way. Third one is bargaining. Well, if I had done this, or if I had done that, or what if I was there? What if, this whole bargaining idea. The fourth one is depression. that goes without saying. You just become depressed. You just don't want to do anything. You just don't have any motivation. And then they say the fifth one is acceptance. Grieving the gift that you were afforded with this person and all that stuff. So those are as I said, 5 stages of grief there. So I'm curious, how through this process, do you feel like you've walked through all 5, or do you feel like you're still kind of on the staircase? And if you are, where are you at in the process?
So those are intriguing. I have never investigated
Yeah,
that.
no, I just did
feel
a
like
little
I
Google search,
haven't
so.
really experienced any of them. Well, okay. So I am actually right now at almost 2 years, I am experiencing anger, but the anger's been there from the get-go, and like instantly I knew what my angers were. But I had made a decision that I wasn't going to allow myself to go there, because I knew it would profit me nothing. But then as time goes on and life kind of gets back to normal for people, I know that it's starting to surface for me right now. I actually just wrote a blog on it, and it's super, how do I want to say, like low key, because like I could have been way more, I guess, explicit with it, and I chose not to because I'm still trying to process it. So just right now, I'm starting to the anger is getting ahead of me, where I've tried to keep it at a safe distance for so long. And so I'm just questioning, do I need to kind of deal with this and just allow it to happen and let it go? Because I'm just kind of a firm believer in, if it's not going to like profit me anything, why go there? And acceptance, I think, has been there all along too. Like I feel like it's hard to put all like my thoughts into words when it comes to it. So, like I spoke about, not like, I don't understand. I don't have like a clear understanding. And I think that's just my mommy heart wanting to protect myself maybe. But I have spoken to people about this. Like, I'm very aware that, like Tyler's not an innocent victim in all this. If you use drugs, you risk losing your life. Like, that's just a reality. So there's so many things about the choices we make in life that are simply just a reality. And this became Tyler's reality, unfortunately. But all the other emotions there, like I would say I don't agree with that. For me personally, a friend had recommended a page on social media that I had joined, and it's all overdose deaths, not just children, but all, like, the whole page is about people that have died of overdose. And I can't really go there because it's super heartbreaking. Like, it's very heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking what happens to people, how people are unkind to them, or have turned their backs on them, or blame them, and like all this really ugly stuff, to be quite honest. And then there's the flip side of the person that has suffered the loss, and now they can no longer function. They can no longer find joy in anything. They can no longer get out of bed. And so to me, that was very heartbreaking. And while I firmly believe that everyone grieves differently and everyone has to do it their own way, I didn't want to do it that way. Like, I was not going to let this destroy me. I was going to pick up all the shattered pieces of my heart, and I was going to do something good with it. Like, I was going to honor, my son through all of this. Like, everything I do is to honor him. And I have my own story. So it's kind of wild how like my story has collided with my son's story. But again, kind of going back to what I wanted to say earlier with Tyler, when Tyler was a teenager, and I was on my way to go see him, and I was so frustrated. Like, I was just over it. I wanted him to pull his crap together.
Was he in jail?
Yeah, he was
Okay.
in JDH. Yeah.
Okay.
And clear as day, I felt like God was telling me that he was going, clear as day, it's simple words. I'm going to use Tyler's struggles to touch the lives of boys. I mean, that's clearly what he said. And for years, so he was probably 15 at this time. And, I held on to that for all these years. Like I held on to that for all these years. And then about a year before Tyler died, he told me that he's like, Mom, I think I'm going to go back to school. I think I'm going to be a counselor and work with boys. And so in my head, I kind of laughed, I'm like, of course you are, because like I held on to that. I believed that fully. And so the night that Tyler died, I think that was my first thought. I remember like kind of when the detective left and the dust settled and everyone was kind of going home. I just went outside and I sat and my sister came out and joined me, and I just like that's all I could wrap my head around was what God had told me. And I'm just like did I hear it wrong? Is God a liar? Is God even real? Like I don't understand. And I remember my sister saying, like we don't, like right now we don't understand, but I promise, God's going to give you beauty for ashes. And I never dreamt in a million years that this is how it was going to play out, and that my son's death was going to be what was used to touch the lives of boys, of people. I believe it goes beyond boys, but every single detail of what I feel like God has spoken to me. And Tyler's my only child God's like given me a word for, which is wild to me also, but I don't think he, like Tyler's special. I think God knew all along. And so yeah, it's been a wild ride, actually. And I mean, even like the You Are Lovely project, that there's significance behind that too, with a song by Shawn McDonald, who is another Christian artist who is also a recovering drug addict, so even that is like, of all songs in all the land, that's the song that was my song for Tyler. And it's actually a really beautiful song, and I encourage people to listen to that one.
What's the name of that one?
It's called Lovely by Shawn McDonald.
Okay,
and it was
Lovely.
never
Thank you.
released. It was never like, it's not a popular or common song. It's kind of hard to find, actually, but it is really it's really a beautiful song, and
We'll
it
put our
is
team
the
on that.
it's
We'll
the
put our team on that.
significance of the whole You Are Lovely project, so it is the basis for it. So yeah, it's been all the pieces have been quite wild. I use the word wild because it's just it's almost like I'm living in something else, if that makes sense. It's been a journey.
Yeah, I think it does, because it's been a wild ride, probably.
Oh my gosh, a wild
emotional roller
Yeah.
coaster in some respects, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. Throughout this whole process, Angie, have you ever blamed yourself?
But I wouldn't say blame. I don't blame myself, because Tyler, I mean, he's almost 30 years old. He had to be responsible for his actions. And I feel like we all have stuff. Like I have stuff, and it's all kind of a matter of how do we deal with it. Like we get to choose what we're going to do with it all. We can either let things in life destroy us, or we can kind of rise above it and become better for it. And I think I'm more that person. Even though I can get stuck in my stuff and my insecurities and all that, I'm always trying to be the better person, like do the best with my life. And Tyler was kind of the opposite. He was an incredible human being. He was just so full of love and so charismatic, and he had this like amazing mischievous smile, and he was incredibly like book smart, and there's all these amazing things about my kid, but he definitely struggled with these things that hurt his heart and kind of broke him down as a child into adulthood. And he let those things control him, to the point that he started using drugs, which I don't even know why he started. His story is more swift. Like, he always smoked pot for as long as I can remember. And he probably messed around with drugs a little, but he was never I always say he wasn't an addict, even though my daughter will disagree with me, but it was very swift. Like life was kind of perfect. He had gotten married. He had a child. It was like everything he ever wanted in life happened. And then it fell apart. And then in a matter of months, he was dead. So I kind of don't really go there because I don't have an answer. And I think it just hurts too much to try to figure that out. It's because that, like, all of that is still so unbelievable to me, that, like, this is what happened. Like, this was the end. So I think, for Tyler, I feel like, choices that I made in life definitely affect your children. They do make your children. And just to be quite honest, without putting anyone down, I don't pick really good men. I don't. And that kind of plays into my story and kind of my struggles a little bit. And so I definitely feel like if I would have been better at the choices I made in life, then certain things wouldn't have affected my children, and this all would have played out a little bit differently. And I know there's like no promise or guarantee on that, but I have a lot of guilt, I think, more than I do blame.
Yeah, I was just going to say that sounds more guilt than blame. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that any of my choices would have played a role kills my heart, for sure. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, if you had an opportunity to go back and talk to him again, what would you say?
I talk a lot, even now. I don't know that it would be so much what I would say, because I feel like I said all the right things.
Yeah, I mean, moms say things all the time, right?
All the time. I think my actions would be
what would your actions
million
be?
times different. I think
because actions speak louder than words.
Oh, absolutely. Right? And I think, that's my one regret. I think out of all of this is, and I speak about this a lot and say this a lot, like I think like I'm a really loving and compassionate and caring person. I always have been. But I also was, I think before Tyler died, I was definitely less willing to be understanding and to kind of educate myself, and definitely more judgmental, because I think those things are easy to do when you don't know and you don't understand. So I feel like it was easier to not put the effort in if he wasn't kind of willing to put the effort in, even though I would have always been there. I definitely had, I guess, stronger, like maybe boundaries or lines that couldn't be crossed, or like it was just easier to not deal with it. Like if he wasn't going to deal with it, then why should I deal with it? But I love you, and when you're ready, then okay, let's do this. And I don't feel that way anymore. I feel like I should have fought harder, and I should have done more. And maybe people will disagree with that. I don't really know. I just feel like,
well, who cares if people disagree with it,
absolutely.
Right?
I think so. I found, I met this lady, Stephanie, who I love, that started a recovery cafe, and I met her at a workshop, and we obviously we connected, and I'm very involved with Recovery Cafe, which is a place for people that use drugs to come to, and there's so much love and acceptance, and just a place for people to belong, and getting to know them and love them. Some of them I've been able to hear their story and tell their story. And so I guess the best way to say is I look at it so differently, and I view it so differently. Just people. It doesn't matter kind of what your story is, or what your journey is, or what brought you there. The fact that you want your life to be lived differently has been like the most beautiful thing out of all this, like coming alongside them and just loving them, and being able to encourage them and just be a part of their journey. I wish I had that opportunity with my son, to be more available, like more there. Not and there's ways that I feel like I kind of turn my back on him because I I didn't know what to do or how to do it or even want to deal with it, to be quite honest. It's exhausting. I say it all the time. It's so hard to love an addict, and it's not loving them. It's loving them and their addiction. Like it's very incredibly hard and heartbreaking. So I don't know if I'm making sense with all this. I just know that there's...
No, I think you are.
Yeah, I would do a million things differently for sure. And there's a million things I wouldn't do. About a week. Oh, no, it was probably like 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks before Tyler died. We had fought all day long. It was the very last time I saw him, and he wanted me to give him $300. And he had this story of how he broke somebody's windshield, but it was going to be a place to stay, but he had to pay for this windshield, which was just such a BS story. He wanted $300 for drugs, and I wasn't going to give him $300. I wasn't going to give him any dollars for drugs. And so, and I guess I can laugh just because, like, I know my kid, but like, he was cruel. I still have all the messages on my phone, and like brutal. The words spoken to me, and what a terrible mother I was. And that how he hoped I died, and blah, blah, blah. And I wasn't going to meet up with him because he was being such a jerk that day, like just such a jerk. And, he was hungry and he wanted this money, and I had stuff of his. I had his mail, and I had some stuff that he had me pick up. And so I knew in the end I'd meet up with him. And so I did. I didn't get out of my car because I was slightly afraid. He had people with him, and he was definitely high. And so I stayed in my car, and, we talked. And the thing is, he was meaner to me, like through phone or like texting or whatever. He was never really mean to me in person. Like he just never was really mean to me, like face to face. And so like we talked, and it was only like a few minutes. I gave him $6. I told him, I have $6. You can go to Taco Bell, because I wasn't going to give him, more money. And when he was getting ready to leave, he said, I love you, Mom. And I said, I love you too, Ty. But I was still so mad at him that day. And I'm forever thankful that he told me he loved me, because I would not have said it that day, because I was just so upset with what a jerk he was being. And so I hold on to that, that literally, it sounds so cliche, but that's literally the last words we said to each other. I never saw him after that. I left 2 days later to go to Hawaii. And when I got home on a Thursday, and he died on a Sunday. So I never spoke to him after that day. I never saw him again after that day.
The power of our words, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm just curious. We don't know what he would say. We don't know what he would do. But I wonder if, in hindsight now, if he would regret the text messages, if he would regret the interaction, the asking for the 300, would he regret some of the choices he made? The fact that he's now left a child fatherless. He's left a wife that I'm sure loved him dearly.
Oh, God, he would hate that. Like, there's no doubts. Like,
because that seems like his greatest fear.
Absolutely.
I'm projecting because I've never met him personally. In fact, you and I have never met till this moment. Yeah. But I'm wondering if he would ever have those regrets.
Without a doubt, he would hate this more than anything for his child. And this is only conversations and like his struggles with his dad. And even as a young boy, like asking the question, like, do I have to be like my dad when I grow up? Which as a child, just the things that can enter your head because you don't know and you don't understand, but yeah, I had that conversation with him. And how heartbreaking is that as a 10-year-old boy to ask if you have to be like your dad when you grow up? Tyler loved his son. I mean, with his whole heart. It was probably the best thing Tyler ever did in life, was having that little boy. Without a doubt, Tyler would hate this. He would hate this so much that this is what is left for Elijah. There's nothing in me that would believe otherwise. it's kind of weird, like spiritually as a believer, and just like thoughts that I've had with Tyler. I actually did an acupuncture. I'd never done it before, and this guy said that, like it could help with emotions, and it was definitely the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced. I don't really care what anyone says. Like, I'm a firm believer, and it
No
was
judgment here.
Oh
Just,
my gosh, like Tyler showed up that day, and it was so incredible. And I'm not one of those like, ooh, type of person. I don't even know how to explain what happened that day, but it was the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced. And I stand behind it 100%. I still cry every day. I still, at night is the hardest for me when I'm alone. There's not one day that's passed that I don't cry when it comes to Tyler, when I just kind of put my thoughts to him, and kind of the craziness of all of this. And like, I'll have conversations where like my heart is just kind of speaking to him, and I say I'm sorry a lot. Like, I say that a lot, that I'm just, to this day, I'm just still so sorry that this is his story, but there's been lots of moments where I feel like he says it back, like, I'm sorry too, Mom. And like, I'm just so proud of you. And so I guess that's my biggest thing, is I just want him to be proud of me, like what I've done with all of this, and who I am today, because I'm definitely different. I'm a different person today, for sure. I feel like, as a believer, I feel like whatever lies that Tyler believed here on earth, like whatever kind of like his mindset was, and the things like that he believed, or maybe he even thought he was like correct or right in, if that makes sense. I feel like now, spiritually, I believe that Tyler stands in complete truth. And so all things are made known to him. And so I do believe Tyler would be looking down and looking at everything differently.
So how can people read more about your stuff? I know you kind of are doing the blogging and the writing thing. How can people go and look at that and read those items that you have?
Like, so on social media, finding my
social
page?
media,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
even
So
I think you have a website too.
I
if I'm
do
not
have
mistaken.
a website. Yep.
Okay,
So
so what's that information?
So my website is yourlovelyproject.com. And that's where my blogs are. And then I do have a Facebook and an Instagram, the You Are Lovely Project. Kind of wild with the coronavirus has kind of put a halt on life a little bit. And so we're into April, and I still have a plan for my project. It really is a project. It's always been my heart. Right now, I write and I blog, and my heart is to bring awareness and change when it comes to addiction, but also suicide and depression, because that all plays a role in my family also. And so I hold all that very close to my heart. I love to tell people stories. So if you have a story to tell, I would love to tell it. Just reach out to me. So there's all those layers of just kind of speaking truth and bringing awareness and wanting people's stories to be told, because I do believe like we all have a story, and it goes much deeper than someone looking at a person that uses drugs and thinking they're just a drug addict. That's a big fat lie. So I want to make that known. There's many layers to someone's story, and why they make the choices that they do, that bring them to the place that now people look at and judge or criticize or condemn. And so that's where, like, I want to break the stigma of all that. My heart, my next part of my journey is I definitely want to be a part of the change, more than just like my words. Like, I love writing, but I want to be actually part of the change. And so my goal for June 10th, which I'm hoping somehow, some way can still happen, is I've always intended to do this, but I want to start selling merchandise. I want to, t-shirts, coffee cups, signs, jewelry, whatever. And all the money from those sales would go back into our community. Like, I want that money to be for someone who doesn't get help or treatment or counseling, or I mean, it's kind of all over the place of what it could look like, but I don't ever want money to be a reason why someone can't do something. And so I want the You Are Lovely project to be that reason why they are able to, and also like promote that. I want people to know that they're lovely. I want people to stand firm in the truth of who they are. And I want people to stop believing the lie. So that's where kind of where that name, comes from, because I think we're shrouded in lies, myself included, and it's time to look at it differently, look at people differently. I think the most touching thing for me in this journey is like you kind of set out to reach, quote, those people that suffer or struggle or have insecurities or have made really terrible choices. I think that the thing that kind of has happened that I didn't see coming was the people that have reached out to me and thanked me for being so bold in my truth and speaking on these things, that they are now looking at it differently. That once where they were kind of like me, where it was easy to judge or easy to condemn because you just assumed or you didn't understand, there are people that are stepping back and being like, hey, wait a minute, like, she's right. We need to be doing this differently. So that's the most touching to me, that people who maybe aren't caught up in this world or haven't been touched by it are able to be like, whoa, wait a minute, like, she's right. We need to be doing this differently.
Yeah, I think all that stuff is necessary.
Yeah.
We partnered a while back. We partnered with Run for Grace. It's an organization here in the Valley. A young lady by the name of Grace Holt took her life tragically in suicide, and so they do a run every year in honor of her. And so what you're saying to me falls right in line with what they're doing as well. And I think that lovely movement, You Are Lovely, is just fascinating because I don't think we as a society believe that as much.
Absolutely.
We have for sure believed that lie for a long time. So last question, then we're going to play a game because I want a little lightheartedness as we get out of here. But why did you want to come on and tell Tyler's story? Why is that so important to you?
Oh gosh, I'll never not speak of my son. Like, I get pretty passionate about it, and for where Tyler's concerned, like I said in the beginning, was that knowledge that yes, my child used drugs, and yes, my child died of a drug overdose, and yes, it's all very, very tragic. But there's so many other things about Tyler that are beautiful and incredible and true about who he was. That was just like, that's a small piece of Tyler. And yes, that's kind of the story of Tyler's ending. That's his death and what was the cause of his death. But there were a million other things about Tyler that were incredible and amazing, and things that people loved about him and knew about him. And so that was, that was the important part of protecting my child. And then, like I had said, that if that was true of my child, then this is true of every other human. And so my heart is for everyone that's still alive, that's still to still have that hope and that understanding and that belief that you are worthy and you are enough and you are so much more than this small little part of your story that people want to criticize or judge you for or condemn you or just assume like you're nothing or you're not worthy. And that's such a lie. Like, that is such a lie. I've met some of the most incredible people that have just been at rock bottom, and decided that enough was enough. And so, I get asked a lot if it's hard for me that people survive or have survived and Tyler didn't. And my answer is always like, good God, no. Like, I'm so thankful for every single person that has survived, that has made the choice to recover, that are living in their recovery. Like, I am sincerely your biggest fan. Like, I love that for you and I want that for you. And my heart is always going to, be for that. And it doesn't make me like noble or anything special. It just makes me human and full of love. And I guess maybe I can love that part of me, that I can just easily love people and want the best for them,
Yeah, I think all of that is so important for us as a society to really think on and really, really pour into. And I think so many times, as I'm hearing more of Tyler's story and more of your story kind of woven together into that, again, not to make light of not only Tyler's life, but your situation, but just, I almost think of it as like the ugly duckling, right? This ugly swan, baby swan that's surrounded with all these ducks, and the ducks are making fun of him going, man, you're so ugly. Don't, go get away from us. And then finally full grown turns into this amazing swan.
Yeah. I think like my mommy heart, when I think of Tyler and I think of all the ways that he struggled and he felt unloved and felt like, so many people didn't care or that he didn't matter. And I picture him looking down on all this. And I just think, God, who would have thought? Like, I just think, does he see all this? That's like, so that like that mommy part of me, where I just think, does he see all this? Does he see what his story is doing and what his story has done, and that he mattered all along,
That's the key.
Yeah.
We all matter all along. So we got this little dice here in the cup.
Okay.
I'm going to roll for you because, chords, microphone, and all that stuff. So there we go. Number one, we play this silly game called Senseless at the end of our show. So this is how we're going to end our show today with this great game. And you rolled the number one. You can clearly see that there. And so here's our question to end with is, which ironic, I think you've answered this quite a few times, but we'll do it one more time.
Okay.
How do you want others to see you?
Oh my goodness. Tricky.
Hey, I just rolled a dice. That's
I know.
What you got.
I think I want people to see me as, I don't know. I get kind of weird when it comes to myself. I can talk about everyone else so freely, but myself, I guess I just want people, like people tell me all the time, how strong and brave and beautiful, like all those things that people can say about you, and like it's touching and encouraging, but I just, that people would be able to see that kind of like the love in me, the light in me. I think that's probably the most important. Like, I just want to be part of the change. I'm like, I say all the time, like, I'm not an expert. I'm not a counselor. I'm not anything special. I'm just a mom who lost her kid. And I just don't ever want anyone else to feel my heartbreak, even though I know that that's not a reality. But if one life can be changed or saved because of my story and what I've chosen to do with my grief and the way that I'm now walking in my life, then my heart is full.
Yeah. I think that's the key to life at all, right? Is one life at a time, changing one heart at a time.
Absolutely.
For sure. Yeah. Well, Angie, thanks so much for coming on.
Gosh, thank you for having me on.
No, absolutely. It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. We'll kind of wrap up the show with that. So, guys, do me a favor. Go out and be kind to somebody today. Don't just think just by their outward appearance that you know where they're coming from. We say so often on this show, you know, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. That really is true. When you really try to empathize with somebody, you really can get a different kind of mindset, different view of where they're at and where they're coming from. So hope you took some things to heart today. I know Angie had a ton of good stuff to talk about and a lot of good stuff that she shared. So guys, we want to invite you back next Wednesday we're going to start our season 5, and I'm so excited to share our next guest with you. So hopefully you'll come back and join us back next week, next Wednesday specifically. And remember, again, I'm going to say it again. So, it's like the spelling words in school. When you write them 3 times each, you remember it maybe just a little bit better. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. On behalf of Garrett and myself, I just want to say thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned till next week as we try on other people's shoes. Thank you so much for joining us on Other People's Shoes. Of course, I'm your host, Neil Matthews. I gotta be honest, Angie's story with Tyler today was very impactful, and I give her tremendous amount of respect for coming on, telling her son's story, and telling just how it really obviously changed her life for the better in this lovely project that she's doing. If you would like more information on that, we have linked that in our show notes, along with her social media. Facebook and Instagram are there as well. And then the 2 songs that we mentioned are linked there as well. Please go check those out. Next week, we start season 5. And here's a sneak preview of our guest.
I need to feel, nothing made me feel that way. So what is going to, I try this, and this. They're there too. They know, but they maybe haven't gotten to that point where they realize they got to have it. It's life or death. It's a point that you come to, I think, and I pray for a lot of people who believe, you just believe in this fairy tale God. You know what?
Now, I know for some of you probably don't recognize her voice, but others of you just might recognize that. That is right. It is my mother-in-law. She's coming in next week. She's kicking off season 5, The Search. What did she search for and find? Well, guess you'll just have to stay tuned and find out. By the way, if you'd like to partner with us in any way financially, we, of course, have linked that also in our show notes. Our PayPal information is there. We, of course, are a tax-deductible nonprofit organization. So if you'd like to partner with us in getting this message of empathy out to the world, we, of course, would love for you to partner with us. Speaking of partnering with us, we are always on the hunt for a good guest. Maybe that's you. If you're listening right now saying, "Man, I would love to be a guest on a podcast. That would be awesome." We would love to have you. So, if you're interested in doing that, please call us at this number, 203-548-7463. Just in case you weren't writing it down, here you go again, 203-548-7463. You can, of course, call or text us and let us know that you'd like to be a guest. Or if you know someone that'd like to be a guest, give them that number, tell them to reach out to us, and we will reach out to them and see if we can get them on the show. Speaking of being on things, I'm sure all of us nowadays, especially during this pandemic, are on social media. Well, we are as well. So, of course, like us, follow us, tweet us on all the major social medias, that, of course, being Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We are under the name OPS Podcast Show. So, be sure to do that. We post daily, so please check that out. And just remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. I just want to say on behalf of Garrett and myself, it has been a pleasure to do 4 seasons with you. And we are so looking forward to what we're going to search for in season 5 as we try on other people's shoes.